Everybody, how's it going? And welcome to week 3 of our Anchored Small Group or Life Group series. Thank you guys so much for showing up each and every week and being faithful. Hope you've been enjoying not just these videos, but the time of fellowship and all that stuff that you have together. In week 3, we talked about weight, the weight that our lives should carry because of Jesus, and essentially how God talks about actually multiple times. I was surprised as I got into studying the scripture. I was surprised to realize how much God talked about weight and how substance and weight was so important when measuring a person or measuring a ministry or measuring the power of a situation. And when I was thinking about this, I started thinking about the time when I was about 2 years into doing ministry. I've been doing this young adult ministry here at Klamath Christian Center for about 8 years now, and I was in about year 2. And God reminded me in an incredible grace-filled way that I'm going to die. And I know it kind of sounds funny to say it that way because it's kind of an obvious thing, but it was the first time that God had really made it known that I was just not going to be around forever. And I think there was something about how I was doing ministry or how I was behaving in my relationship with God, and especially how I was behaving in my relationship with other people as their pastor, that I had this kind of superiority complex that I was some incredible preacher and pastor and this and that I was essentially leading people to, well, me. And God gave me this realization through his word where he talks about before he makes the final ascension unto heaven, after he's already resurrected from the dead, and he comes back to see his disciples, and he's spending time with them, and he's eating breakfast, and he looks at Peter and he says, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter says, "Of course I do." And Jesus says, "Well, then feed my sheep." And he looks at him 3 times and he says that again. He asks Peter if he loves him, and Peter kind of gets frustrated and says, "Of course I love you, God." And he replies every single time with "feed my sheep." And God was bringing me this revelation and saying, pretty much asking me what he asked Peter, said, "Do you love me, Ben?" And I, of course, came back and just said, "Yeah, absolutely, I love you." And then God was coming back and saying, "Feed my sheep." Essentially, is a realization that God was telling me, look, I don't care about your preaching as much. And of course, God has given me a gift and a talent and ability and a love for public speaking, and that's great or whatever. But God wasn't interested in my organizational skills, my administrative skills, my vision casting, or my preaching, or my worship leading, if there wasn't any substance or there wasn't any weight behind what I was doing. And so he reminded me that I'm going to die, that this is a temporary thing, that ministry isn't going to last forever, and that I might as well leave behind something more than podcasts and videos, but instead leave behind lives someday that are going to be touched by Jesus, that have been touched by Jesus and have gone on to the rest of the world and begun to touch the world. There has to be more to our ministry is what I'm trying to say. There has to be more to our lives than coming up, making a paycheck, going home, owning a home, having a family, having the best wife, the best husband, the best job, the best career, the blah, 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 blah. There has to be something more, because eventually you're going to go away and you have to leave behind something, or you have to have created something that is going to lead people to Jesus in the meantime. Otherwise, our lives come down to a lot less than you wish that they had. The amount of money in your savings account isn't going to matter. Instead, it's going to matter what you have done for the love and the life of Jesus. And so with that, I want to ask you a few quick questions. This is going to be a little bit of a shorter video than normal, but I want to ask you these 3 questions. Where does the substance of your life come from? And I know that we're all probably Jesus people showing up to these meetings, and you can say what all of us could say in Sunday school, where the answer to everything is Jesus. I know you know the right answers. I know you know what you're supposed to say, but I want you to really challenge yourself in these discussions and be honest with yourself. And maybe you are at a point where you really have poured everything into Jesus and everything is right and how it's supposed to be. And I think that's awesome. And you should share how you got there if that is the case. But I want us to be real honest with these questions. And when I ask, where does the substance of your life come from? Let's be honest. Let's be vulnerable. Let's be real about it. Maybe the substance of your life comes from how many likes you're getting on your Instagram. Look, I've been there. Maybe you've been there too. Maybe the substance of your life comes from how good a grades you are getting, or what so-and-so thinks about you. Or maybe it's your relationship, or maybe it's this or that. let's be real honest about where we find the substance of our life right at this moment. Secondly, what do your hopes and dreams consist of? Let's be totally honest with this one too. What do your hopes and dreams consist of? Maybe it's a certain amount of money. Maybe it's living in a certain area. Maybe it's getting married by a certain time, or maybe it's having a certain amount of kids. Um, but I just want to know, let's open it up for discussion. What do our hopes and dreams really consist of at this moment? And then finally, to kind of bring all the questions together, the final question is, how do we fulfill our career, our business, or our life goals and still make Jesus the center of all of those things? How do we do this? Now, it's easy for me to say because my life and my career is wrapped around ministry, but at the same time, I can build a church. I can gather people. I can build buildings. I can create technology and have meetings and services and worship and guitars. I can do all of these things, but I can still be missing actually making Jesus the center. So I have to stop very often and make sure that in my own heart that the things that we're doing, I ask myself all the time, why are we doing what we are doing? Why are we making t-shirts? Why are we holding events at OIT? Why are we doing worship like this and prayer like this and having this night and this night? And I try to constantly check all those things to make sure that we're actually doing this to see people saved, to see people discipled, and come to know and to love Jesus with all their life. So I want to ask you, how do we fulfill our career business goals and still make Jesus the center? And how do we do that? And why are we doing that? Why is it important? That kind of wraps all those three things together. So I want you to know finally that all of our lives have to have a weight. It doesn't matter about how you look on the outside, but it's about the weight and the substance that you carry in Jesus on the inside. Love you guys.